There comes a day quiet, unannounced, and absolutely final when the empath stops bending. When the heart that once absorbed every wound, every projection, every twisted story simply says, no more. It doesn't explode, it doesn't scream, it just stops. And in that silence, the narcissist begins to unravel. Because the empath's collapse was never physical, it was energetic. They were the emotional architecture that kept the illusion standing. Their compassion held the narcissist's ego together. Their forgiveness fed the manipulation. Their empathy made the lie believable. But when that empathy evolves into awareness, the illusion crumbles. That is the day the narcissist panics, not because they lost control over you, but because they've lost the mirror that made them believe they were whole. You see, the empath's greatest weapon was never their kindness. It was their capacity to see beneath masks, to feel what others refused to acknowledge, to understand without judgment. But this gift, when unguarded, becomes a curse. Because empaths attract what they can heal, and narcissists hunt what they can consume. One gives endlessly, the other takes without end. And so they dance until the day the empath opens their eyes and realizes the dance was never love, but a slow bleeding disguised as devotion. Carl Jung warned of this. He said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But the empath's transformation is different. It is violent in its silence, because awakening is never gentle when you've been living in emotional captivity. At first, the empath blames themselves. They wonder if they were too sensitive, too loving, too forgiving. But then the clarity sets in like lightning. No, the sin was never feeling too much. The sin was believing that love could fix what accountability refused to touch. The sin was mistaking abuse for intensity, confusion for passion, and chaos for connection. And when this truth finally roots itself, when the empath looks into the mirror and no longer sees a victim, but a sovereign being, everything changes. The energy shifts, the balance collapses. The narcissist senses it immediately, even before words are spoken. Because the empath's withdrawal is not just emotional, it's spiritual. Syphoria begins that psychic awakening when the empath stops existing in reaction to the narcissist's moods. For the first time, the empath stops explaining themselves, stops defending, stops analyzing, stops absorbing. There is no announcement, no closure, no warning. The narcissist will search for the crack in your armor, the familiar spot to inject guilt or doubt, but they will find nothing, just stillness. And that stillness terrifies them, because they have built their power on your response. Without your energy, they have no reality. The narcissist does not live in truth, they live in reflection. They are projection made flesh, a hollow architecture built from other people's emotions. So when you no longer mirror their false self back to them, they collapse. Their panic masquerades as anger, as confusion, as sudden affection. They will beg, they will rage, they will promise change, but you will feel it now, the emptiness beneath every word. This is the day the empath transcends the role of healer and becomes the observer, the one who sees the game, the pattern, the manipulation, and chooses not to play. Jung called this the integration of the shadow, when the conscious self merges with what was once unconscious, and innocence is replaced by wisdom. The empath no longer needs to fix, they simply see. Mindset shifts from reaction to realization. You stop asking, why did they do this to me? And start asking, why did I allow it for so long? And instead of hating yourself for staying, you thank yourself for surviving. You begin to understand that compassion without boundaries is self-destruction in disguise. You start to love yourself in a way that no longer requires bleeding to prove it. Belief transforms. You stop believing that love must hurt to be real. You stop romanticizing broken people as deep. You stop mistaking emotional chaos for connection. You learn that real love feels like peace, not adrenaline. It's steady, not stormy. It's mutual, not martyrdom. Clarity arrives like dawn, slow, inevitable, unstoppable. You see now that the narcissist never loved you. They loved your light. They loved the way your empathy made them feel like more than they were. They loved your forgiveness because it freed them from self-reflection. You realized that every apology was a strategy, every compliment a trap, every argument a stage play designed to keep you invested. But now you are no longer invested, and that's the purest revenge. Not anger, not retaliation, just detachment. Vision expands. You see through the entire structure, the flattery, the gaslighting, the triangulation. You see how they study people like prey, mapping weaknesses, mimicking emotions, manipulating empathy. And you understand now why they fear your silence. Because silence is not absence, it's power condensed. It is the sound of no longer feeding what was never real. Purpose reawakens. Your life becomes about creation again, not correction. You no longer orbit someone else's dysfunction. You no longer live in reaction to chaos. You begin to build. You paint. You write. You grow. You move. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop being the therapist in relationships and start being the architect of your own world. Discipline becomes self-protection. You stop giving second chances to patterns that only repeat. You stop justifying cruelty under the guise of trauma. You realize that empathy is sacred and that not everyone deserves access to it. The moment you enforce that truth, you stop attracting predators because predators cannot feed on what does not submit. Action becomes quiet. You don't confront them. You don't warn them. You simply walk away. You let absence become your statement. You let peace become your rebellion. You understand now that true power never needs to announce itself. The narcissist will feel it anyway, the way a shadow feels the light that exposes it. Gratitude emerges not for them, but for the lesson. Because they were the mirror that showed you where your boundaries were missing. They were the darkness that revealed the strength of your light. Without them, you might never have learned the sacred art of saying enough. Adaptability becomes instinct. You move through life now with new awareness. You can spot manipulation instantly. You can hear the dishonesty in tone, see the emptiness behind charm. You have grown so used to chaos that peace now feels like power. You have recalibrated your nervous system to recognize calm as safety, not boredom. Resilience becomes your quiet crown. You do not seek revenge because you know the universe handles symmetry perfectly. Their downfall will not come from you. It will come from their own emptiness. The narcissist cannot escape themselves. They will chase validation until the end of time because they cannot sit in silence without collapsing. Meanwhile, you thrive in that silence. You've learned to turn it into art, into joy, into sovereignty. Learning never ends. You begin to study human nature with fascination instead of fear. You understand that darkness exists in everyone, including yourself. You stop labeling people as villains or victims and instead see patterns, wounds, projections. You have integrated your shadow, which means you can never again be controlled by someone who hides behind theirs. And this is the moment of true freedom, when your empathy is no longer weakness, but wisdom. When your love is no longer desperation, but discernment. When your silence is no longer confusion, but choice. The narcissist will panic. They will reach for you in their emptiness, trying to recreate the reflection that made them feel alive. But they will find nothing but the echo of their own voice. Because you are gone, not just physically, but energetically. Your light no longer bends toward them. Your heart no longer opens at their knock. You are not the same. You are awakened. You are dangerous in your calmness, untouchable in your clarity, sovereign in your silence. The empath they once broke has become the mirror they now fear to look into. And that is the day the empath refuses to break, that the narcissist begins to fall apart. Because the truth they could never face has finally arrived, and it stands in front of them quietly, smiling, unbroken. And from that moment forward, the world moves differently for you. You begin to notice it, how the air feels cleaner, how your thoughts move slower, how your body feels lighter without the weight of someone else's chaos dragging behind it. You have entered what Jung would call the process of individuation, the sacred rebirth that happens when a soul finally separates from illusion. You are no longer orbiting someone else's gravity. You are your own sun now. And yet, it is in this silence, this unshakable calm, that the narcissist's panic truly begins. Because for the first time, they feel the absence of control. They feel the emptiness of their own performance. They feel the silence where your validation used to echo. They will call, they will text, they will promise transformation, they will remind you of the good times, of the laughter, of the closeness, anything to pull you back into orbit. But you are no longer reachable. The empath that once responded to every cry for help now recognizes manipulation dressed as remorse. You've learned that apologies without change are just strategies for control. You've learned that remorse without accountability is theater. You've learned that a narcissist doesn't want healing, they want maintenance. They want to be saved from the consequences of their own shadow. And you've retired from that job. This is where your mindset crystallizes into power. You understand now that boundaries are not walls, they are filters. You do not isolate yourself, you refine access. Not everyone deserves to touch your energy. Not everyone deserves to know your thoughts. Your compassion is still vast, but it is no longer unguarded. You can care deeply and still say no. You can love profoundly and still walk away. Jung taught that what you resist persists. You no longer resist your sensitivity, you honor it. You no longer resist your empathy, you structure it. You no longer resist your intuition, you follow it. The world will still try to call you too much, too soft, too intense, but you will smile quietly. Because what they call too much is precisely what gives you sight. Belief, once naive, has now turned sacred. You no longer believe in potential. You believe in alignment. You no longer wait for people to change. You wait for peace to guide you. You no longer hope for closure. You create it by closing the door. You've realized that your energy is a form of prayer, and what you give attention to, you give life to. And that is why your absence is their punishment. Because without your energy, they can't sustain the illusion. The narcissist's panic is not about losing you. It's about losing access to the reflection of goodness they borrowed from you. They are terrified not of your silence, but of their own reflection in it. This is the empath's quiet revenge, not cruelty, but withdrawal. You've taken back your empathy and turned it inward. You've stopped trying to heal people who gain power from being broken. You've stopped giving explanations to those who listen only to twist them. You've stopped offering light to those who thrive in darkness. You've chosen peace, and that peace terrifies them more than any confrontation ever could. Clarity sharpens like a blade. You see through their future attempts before they even happen. The love bombing, the sudden nostalgia, the feigned accountability, you see it all for what it is. A performance rehearsed for the next victim. And that clarity no longer wounds you, it empowers you. Because you realize that their pattern is not your story. Vision expands into purpose. You start building your life on truth instead of trauma. You find new relationships, not because you need healing, but because you are whole. You find new passions, not because you're running, but because you're finally free. You move through life with the calm awareness that comes from no longer needing to prove your goodness to anyone. Discipline becomes devotion not to others, but to your peace. You protect it like a sacred temple. You no longer open the door to chaos just because it knocks politely. You no longer entertain conversations that cost your sanity. You no longer respond to energy that feels heavy. You realize that silence is not avoidance, it is mastery. Because silence is not emptiness, it is control over what enters your mind. Gratitude becomes your teacher. You begin to thank the storm for forcing you to grow roots. You thank the manipulation for teaching you discernment. You thank the pain for showing you the cost of unguarded empathy. And you thank yourself not for surviving, but for awakening. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." You understand that now, and you wear your scars not as shame, but as scripture. Adaptability becomes your superpower. You can now move through the world without needing to fix what's broken. You can see the pain in others and choose compassion without attachment. You can hear manipulation and remain unmoved. You can sense deceit and still smile, because you've realized that truth doesn't need to fight, it only needs to stand. Resilience becomes serenity. You no longer shake when tested. You no longer crumble when abandoned. You no longer fear loss, because everything that left only made space for truth. You've outgrown the frequency of desperation. You have stepped into the realm of power, and power doesn't chase, it attracts. Learning becomes expansion. You study energy now, not words. You read intention, not appearance. You listen to silence as much as to speech. You know the difference between sincerity and performance. You've realized that people reveal themselves not in how they treat you when they need you, but in how they treat you when they no longer do. And so, you move forward, not bitter, not broken, but illuminated. You no longer seek revenge. Your peace is revenge. You no longer want to expose anyone. Their absence will do that for you. You no longer explain your departure. Your silence explains everything. The narcissist will still try to replicate what they had with you, but they will fail. Because you cannot replicate light without having your own source. And while they remain trapped in a cycle of illusion, you are reborn into authenticity. You've turned your empathy into intuition, your wounds into wisdom, your silence into strength. You no longer absorb pain. You reflect it back as understanding. You are no longer the mirror that flatters their ego. You are the mirror that shows them what they refuse to see. That is why they panic, because your calm exposes their chaos. Your peace reveals their emptiness. Your detachment mirrors their dependency. And deep down they know it, the game is over. You are the ending they cannot rewrite. You are the silence they cannot manipulate. You are the light they cannot dim. You have become Jung's vision made real, a soul who has looked into the abyss and returned with power. You've touched your own darkness and learned to wield it with grace. You've seen evil, and you did not become it. You've been used, and you did not lose your ability to love. You've been broken, and you built yourself back from truth. You are the empath who refused to break. And the day you did, the narcissist met their greatest fear, a reflection that no longer responded, a light that no longer burned for them, a soul that no longer believed the lie. You are awake. You are sovereign. You are free. And now you do not chase closure, because your silence is the closure. You do not seek justice, because your peace is the justice. You do not wish them pain, because their emptiness is the pain. And you are the lessons they will never forget, the one they will never replace, the one who walked away and never looked back. And as you continue walking quietly, gracefully, untouched, the world around you begins to mirror that same stillness. You notice how life rearranges itself to match the energy of your newfound peace. People who once drained you now fade into the background. Conversations that once provoked you no longer find a place in your mind. Situations that once pulled you into chaos now dissolve before they even reach you. Because when an empath refuses to break, their energy changes frequency and chaos can no longer find them. The narcissist feels this first. They can sense, even from afar, that something is missing, the oxygen of attention they once breathed, the reflection of validation they once depended on. Their world starts to collapse inward, consumed by the echo of their own emptiness. For the first time, they must face the one thing they always avoided, themselves. And there is nothing left to absorb the impact of that realization. This is where their panic becomes desperation. They will attempt to return not because they love you, but because they need your energy to survive. They will shape-shift into the version of themselves you once dreamed they could be. They will speak the language of growth, the poetry of accountability, the illusion of change. But now you see the pattern, the way remorse only exists when they lose access, the way vulnerability appears only when exposure looms. And instead of reacting, you observe. You no longer feel the magnetic pull of their performance. You no longer mistake emotional theatrics for transformation. You've learned the most powerful form of discernment, the ability to see through words into the energy beneath them. The empath who once felt everything has learned to feel the truth. This is where your mindset ascends into mastery. You begin to realize that your power was never in how deeply you could feel others, it was in how deeply you could understand yourself. For so long, your empathy was external. You gave it outward, endlessly, selflessly, blindly. Now you've inverted it. You have become the recipient of your own compassion. You listen to yourself with the same tenderness you once gave others. You forgive yourself for every time you mistook loyalty for love, self-sacrifice for purpose, pain for proof of depth. And this shift, this internal redirection, it's what terrifies the narcissist most. Because when the empath begins to heal, the narcissist loses their source of power. You no longer orbit their emotional gravity. You've become your own universe, whole, self-sustaining, infinite. Belief now transforms into conviction. You believe in your worth not as an idea, but as an absolute. You believe that your boundaries are sacred. You believe that walking away is not abandonment, but alignment. You believe that peace is not found in others, it is generated within. This belief becomes your shield, and no manipulation, no provocation, no projection can penetrate it. Clarity becomes illumination. You see through the matrix of emotional dependency that once kept you trapped. You realize that the narcissist's world is built on mirrors, reflections of what they steal, mimic, and perform. But you are no longer in that hall of mirrors. You've broken through it. You've reached reality raw, quiet, unfiltered. And in this clarity you find your purpose again. Purpose now is not saving anyone. It is embodying what truth looks like when it refuses to be corrupted. It is living in integrity so deeply that deception cannot survive near you. It is becoming an example of strength that does not shout, of love that does not wound, of compassion that does not destroy the one who gives it. Discipline becomes liberation. You train your mind to remain centered no matter the storm. You no longer chase closure through conversation. You no longer seek healing through explanation. You no longer confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. You simply allow truth to be truth, and you move forward. You've mastered the art of emotional detachment, not as apathy, but as respect for your peace. Action becomes silent precision. You move when it matters. You speak only when necessary. You no longer react to every vibration that crosses your path. Because reaction was once how they controlled you, how they pulled you back into the performance. But now, your silence is the most powerful response of all. It says, I see everything. And I choose peace anyway. Gratitude deepens into transformation. You no longer look back with anger. You look back with understanding. Every manipulation, every betrayal, every heartbreak was a teacher, brutal, yes, but divine. You realize that if they had treated you better, you might never have awakened. You might have stayed asleep in a comfortable illusion. And so you thank them not out of affection, but out of wisdom. You understand now that your pain was the price of your clarity. Adaptability becomes your natural rhythm. You can now move through both chaos and calm without losing yourself. You can listen to the noise of the world without absorbing it. You can witness suffering without becoming it. You can love without losing yourself. This is the ultimate evolution of empathy, when compassion no longer means self-destruction. Resilience becomes sovereignty. You are no longer afraid of loss because you have already faced the greatest one, losing yourself. And you survived it. You've learned that solitude is not loneliness, it is power undiluted. You've learned that silence is not absence, it is presence magnified. You've learned that walking away is not weakness, it is strength perfected. And now learning becomes enlightenment. You understand the architecture of the human psyche, the endless dance between shadow and light, between love and power, between the self and the mask. You see how most people live, imprisoned by their own projections. But you are free. You have integrated your shadow. You have faced your own capacity for anger, control, and need. You have learned to hold it all with awareness instead of repression. And that integration has made you unshakable. The narcissist cannot understand this transformation because their survival depends on denial. They will search for the old you, the empath who needed to be needed, the healer who confused compassion with compliance. But that version of you no longer exists. You have been reborn from the fire they thought would destroy you. You have become untouchable, not because you are emotionless, but because your emotions no longer control you. Not because you are cold, but because your warmth now belongs only where it is honored. Not because you no longer feel, but because you now choose who and what is worthy of your feeling. And in this state, the empath becomes what Jung described as individuated, a being fully conscious of both light and shadow, living not as a reaction, but as a force of creation. You are no longer a mirror, you are a sun. You radiate energy that cannot be manipulated, reflected, or contained. The narcissist panics not because you left, but because you awakened. They can replace your body, but never your energy. They can find another admirer, but not another soul like yours. They can copy your words, but not your essence. What they lost was not a person, it was the power your empathy gave them. And now that you have taken it back, their empire collapses. You are the closure they never expected. You are the mirror they can't shatter. You are the peace they cannot disrupt. You are the lesson they will never learn. You are awake. You are sovereign. You are free. And the day you refused to break, the day you chose silence, detachment, and self-respect was the day everything reversed. The day their power ended and yours began. Because the empath who finally says no is not soft. They are sacred. They are unstoppable. They are the end of the illusion. And that is why the narcissist panics. And as the story closes, something vast opens not in the world around you, but inside you. The quiet that once frightened you now feels holy. It no longer sounds like emptiness. It sounds like truth. There's no more shaking, no more questioning, no more reaching for a hand that keeps disappearing. There's only stillness, clean, powerful, infinite stillness. You have walked through every layer of deception. You have been the healer, the mirror, the forgiver, the fighter, and now you are simply free. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that is what this silence has given you the space to finally meet yourself, without distortion, without noise, without the weight of anyone else's projection. You don't crave revenge, because revenge belongs to those still trapped in the wound. You don't need closure, because closure belongs to those who still believe the story continues. You don't even need forgiveness, because you've outgrown the language of blame altogether. You have arrived at something greater understanding. You understand now that empathy was never the problem, it was the lack of direction. You were not too kind, you were just unguarded. You were not too forgiving, you were just unboundaried. But now, your kindness has structure. Your forgiveness has wisdom. Your love has discernment. You are no longer a river spilling over everything. You are the ocean, contained, limitless, complete. And from that stillness, your power radiates without effort. You don't need to defend your energy anymore. Your energy defends you. You no longer explain yourself to those who thrive on misunderstanding. You no longer stay where peace must be begged for. You no longer accept apologies that arrive empty-handed. You have become what Jung called the fully awake soul, not pure light, but the perfect balance of light and shadow, compassion and clarity, peace and power. When you walk now, the ground feels different, lighter, more deliberate. Every step you take carries the gravity of someone who has already been through hell and found heaven inside it. The narcissist name no longer burns in your chest, it vanishes like smoke in sunlight. They cannot follow you here. They cannot touch you now. You have crossed into a realm they cannot enter, the realm of self-possession. This is the moment of transcendence, when the empath, who once absorbed everyone's pain, becomes the master of their own vibration. When your silence is not defense but dominion, when your peace is not fragile but absolute. You don't wish them harm. You don't wish them anything, because they no longer live inside your consciousness. You've reclaimed the throne of your mind. You've taken back your light, your narrative, your destiny. And now, when you look in the mirror, you see not the reflection of a broken empath trying to heal the world, but the reflection of a sovereign being who has already done it. The healer has healed. The giver has become whole. The empath has become the alchemist, turning pain into wisdom, wounds into gateways, endings into rebirths. The narcissist will feel the echo of your absence forever, because what they lost was not control but connection. What they lost was not attention but access to purity. What they lost was not love but the mirror that made them feel human. But you gained everything. You gained clarity, you gained sovereignty, you gained yourself. And that, in the end, is the greatest victory of all. You are not broken. You are not naive. You are not cold. You are awake. You are whole. You are free. And this eternal silence, this calm, this power that hums quietly beneath your skin, is the sound of an empath who finally refused to break, and in doing so, became unbreakable. And now there is nothing left to prove, no fight left to win, no illusion left to shatter. There is only you standing in the stillness you once feared, realizing that this quiet is not the end of something, it is the beginning of everything. The empath who once carried worlds on their shoulders has finally put them down. The one who once apologized for existing now breathes without permission. The one who once mistook pain for purpose now walks in peace that no one gave, because it was never anyone's to give. It was yours all along. The narcissist fades not with drama, but with distance. Their name, their shadow, their chaos, it dissolves into the background noise of a life you've outgrown. They become what they always were, a lesson, a mirror, a test of how deeply you could love before you learned where love must end. And as that last trace of them disappears from your spirit, something divine rises in its place, a silence that feels like divinity itself, the kind of calm that doesn't depend on the world behaving, the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout. You are no longer just healed, you are transformed. Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And you chose. You chose to walk away without hatred. You chose to love yourself without condition. You chose peace over proving. You chose wisdom over reaction. You chose to end the pattern that your ancestors, your parents, your past selves could not end. You became the first in your lineage to say, enough. You've broken the spell. You freed the empath from the endless loop of saving what was never yours to save. You've returned home to yourself, to your essence, to the still, powerful center that never stopped waiting for you to remember. And now, you move differently. You love differently. You speak less, but every word carries truth. You give less, but everything you give carries power. You no longer need to be understood because you understand yourself. You no longer need to be validated because you validate your own existence. The narcissist will never find another you, not because you were perfect, but because you were real. And reality is something they can only imitate, never embody. They will spend their life chasing reflections. While you live in the sun, you are no longer the empath who breaks for others. You are the empath who builds from within. You are no longer the mirror that flatters delusion. You are the mirror that reflects truth. You have become what Jung called the individuated soul, the human who has seen their darkness and chosen to become light. You have balanced compassion with clarity, softness with sovereignty, love with boundaries. You have walked through hell, and realized you were the fire all along. And now, wherever you go, the world will feel it. People will sense it in your silence, in your presence, in the weight of your calm. You are not louder now, you are deeper. You are not colder, you are purer. You do not glow like a flame anymore. You resonate like the sun. You have stopped breaking, you have stopped explaining, you have stopped chasing. And in doing so, you have become everything you were meant to be. The one who walks away in peace and the world trembles. The one who loves without losing themselves. The one who cannot be controlled because they have mastered themselves. You are awake. You are sovereign. You are infinite. And this sacred silence surrounding you now is not the echo of loss, but the sound of your rebirth. The empath refused to break, and in that refusal became eternal.